You're listening to the After Dark podcast with NTParanormal. Nothing normal about it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the After Dark podcast with NTParanormal. I am on the line with Allie Bolton and Sara Hatfield. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hey.
So this is like our fourth or fifth show broadcast from captivity, I guess. We have not been let back out into the wild yet. And so we're getting a little desperate on our topics here, I think.
This is important information.
What are we talking about, Allie?
All the bad shit that happens in April. That just seems to kind of go batshit crazy, particularly in the third week of April is when bad things happen.
Don't bad things just happen all the time, though?
Yeah, I mean, you're right on that, but there seems to be something, you know, not even just in America, but globally, about the third week of April that, you know, tends to make things go a little batshit. You know, I'm gonna touch on a couple of them, but I'm staying more to the American side of it.
Okay.
But because that dates back to the American Revolution, which I mean, I guess we just
was there stuff that showed up before then?
No, not that I've seen, but that doesn't mean it hasn't. But I mean. So
this is what you were telling me on the phone is like this is a pretty big conspiracy sort of thing, or like it's like I've never heard of it.
Me either.
Because I was totally confused when you started talking about it. How did you come across this particular string of info?
Well, when I was a kid, you know, just noticing, like, you know, especially like after the Oklahoma City bombing, and then wondering why that happened, and of course, you know, 2 years prior was Waco, and then, you know, years prior to that, and just going back and back and back. I didn't come across like the quote conspiracies behind it until I was an adult and I had access to Google.
I think last podcast on the left did an episode.
Yeah, they did, and it was really fascinating. So, like, I kind of wanted to touch on it because I find it so fucking interesting. Like, I don't believe in a lot of this, like, conspiracies, like, you know, the fact that, you know, Washington, D.C. was built in the shape of a pentagram by the Illuminati.
But it was.
And
that's a thing that happened.
And the Freemasons, which we will touch on.
The Freemasons did? Okay. Yeah, I can see where this is going.
Okay.
Hey, Elena. So Elena says she's here for this. She's already bringing up Notre Dame.
Notre Dame happened.
Is the 20th the third week?
No, the third week in April refers to the days between April 15th and April 21st.
Okay, so the 20th is in the third week, so Columbine counts. Hitler's birthday.
Yeah, Hitler's birthday.
National Weed Day.
Yeah, so Patriots Day also kind of plays, like, it's kind of been noticed, because Patriots Day is on April 17th, and the Boston Marathon was on that April 15th, which, you know, it was Patriots Day weekend, you know, that's why they do the marathon. You know, and it hasn't been lost on people, particularly a certain amount of militia groups, which come into play later on. I have a quote from Joel Achenbach from the Washington Post. You know, it seems that the third week in April has become a time of calamity. You know, he quoted that. Now, this time period only accounts for 2% of our calendar year, but as we've seen over time, or will see, that it accounts for way more than 2% of American catastrophes that fall into this window.
Okay, well, that's kind of interesting, because I was curious about that, because, you know, you can take, like, any tragedy spread out over time, and then, you know, apply, like, what the concentration is to different time periods over the year. And,
absolutely.
And I was
story,
thinking you would just find that these were just, like, notable. Hey Julie, hey Mina, Elena.
Hey, funny story about it being Weed Day, Hitler's birthday, and the day of the Columbine shooting. Like 3 years after the Columbine shooting, one of the guys in our school scrawled 420 on a bathroom wall because, you know, he liked weed, and they expelled him because
geez.
of Columbine.
Yeah. In fact, in one of the incidents that I'm going to go into, the Virginia Tech massacre, he basically called the Columbine shooters martyrs.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that was
martyrs. Bad. One of them was a racist, anti-Semitic jerk.
Yeah,
but, you know.
Yeah, I believe that. Isn't that why they chose 420? Anyway.
Well, one of them was Jewish.
Yeah, which is so weird.
Because there's one of the lines in the basement tape where he's like, "Oh, Eric, you're Jewish? How sad for you."
Well,
I've got a theory that I'll hold more towards the end on why everything. Hey, Sarah, vape further away from your phone.
I'm holding it like 3 feet from my head, but okay.
I think it adds ambiance.
Well, okay. No, the phone's just like at my arm length. There's nowhere farther I can put it.
Just stick your face in the pillow and, you know, go to sleep. I don't know. It's loud.
No, Sarah, stay. Okay, so
let's go in the Wayback Machine and let's go to, I guess, some of the first events that have been documented as part of this conspiracy.
So this one I really wouldn't consider a tragedy as much. It just kind of, it kickstarted the American Revolution. On April 19th, 1775 marks the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which, of course, began in Lexington, Massachusetts. 49 colonists were killed and 39 were wounded, and 5 were missing in action, where 73 British were killed, 174 wounded, and 26 went MIA. This was a clear victory for the colonists, and it was the first conflict of the Revolutionary War. There's really nothing big there. It's just, I just thought that it's kind of cool that it just kind of goes into line. You could say that, that's why everything bad happens in America.
You could say that. Because
you could.
We seceded.
Yeah. Us ungrateful colonists.
I think it probably has more to do with all the tea that we dumped into the harbor.
That was seriously a waste of perfectly good tea.
Well, it was, let's be real about it for a minute, it was English tea, which is not the best tea. It wasn't like they dumped just like crates of Lipton sweet tea in the.
No, they dumped bricks of tea into the ocean.
Yeah, we're talking like Earl Grey. It's not the best.
Maybe it's because they dressed it up and blamed it on Indians.
Maybe it's because we had just spent the previous 50 years accusing people of being witches. And burning them at the stake mercilessly. And
I think we were mostly drowning them.
We were mostly drowning and hanging them, burning them at the stake. I think maybe one.
Yeah, that wasn't a thing.
And sewing letters to their clothing so that you would know they were hoes.
That was a book.
And maybe they shouldn't have been hoes. I'm just kidding. We're sex positive here. So... that was kind of like the first thing that kind of came up. And then on April 15th, 1865, Lincoln is assassinated.
Well, that's a big jump. That's like a whole 16 presidents later. 14.
I know, right? So I didn't see anything in between the years, but... in 1865, of course, Lincoln is assassinated.
Okay, well, there's bound to be several railroad building accident tragedies. I'm sure some of those happened in April that we can blame.
Absolutely. Well, especially because, we were so neglectful of, safety in between then. There's going to be several jumps. And then in April 18th, 1906, was the San Franciscan earthquake. It sparked fires that lasted for days, and 3,000 people were killed. It's the second worst natural disaster in United States history.
You said that's 1906, correct?
Yes, 1906.
I'm trying to remember what I actually know about that. So that's when the San Andreas fault line just completely split. The first time, like when it was documented, right? Or am I wrong?
I really can't say, but that sounds right. From like everything I know about it, I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know that it killed a lot of people, and modern San Francisco sprung up from, what happened.
What was the fatality rate on that? You said that? I know you did.
3,000.
That's pretty large number of people for 1906.
That's a large number of people for anything, really. Especially a natural disaster.
When did the influenza epidemic hit?
1918.
1918. You think that
was
probably in April too?
That was later on in the year, because the first cases were were actually in U.S. soldiers. But yeah.
Yeah, we just called it the Spanish flu because they were the first people to report deaths.
Yeah, they were, and
everyone else was keeping quiet about it.
Well, that and racism.
Good old racism. So the San Francisco earthquake pretty much it leveled the city. And then of course April 15th, 1912. The Titanic sank. It struck an iceberg in the late night.
We're going from 1906 to 1912 now, so only 6 years now. So the intervals are getting smaller.
Yeah, and they do. It's crazy.
Well, and our documentation of history is getting better.
Good point. Sarah has to shit on the party.
Well, no, it's just that back then, if you wanted to get information from one side of the country to the other, it wasn't as easy. So there's probably a lot of stuff in rural areas that went undocumented.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Sarah on that one.
Probably, and then probably the telegraph was invented at some point.
Oh, it was. So 1912 hit an iceberg in the late night on April 14th, sank just after midnight on April 15th, and I think 1,500 fatalities, and among the fatalities was 119 Americans. Because, we have to document the Americans. They're the only ones that count. I'm joking. And then from there, it's actually going to make an even bigger jump. We're going to jump all the way to April 16th, 1947.
Julie's asking about the Whiskey Rebellion, but I don't know what that is.
Isn't that just prohibition?
I have no idea.
So I don't know. I have to look that one up.
I'll look it up. Keep talking.
Okay, so April 16th, 1947, the Port of Texas explosion. A cargo ship full of improperly stored ammonium nitrate fertilizer exploded just off the Texas coast. This caused a chain reaction that blew up other ships and freight. It killed roughly about 581 people and led to the first ever class action lawsuit, which the conclusion of that on April 13th, 1950, the district court found the United States responsible of negligent acts of omission by 168 different agencies. It was appealed to the Supreme Court, and Congress in 1957 decided to finally award the victims' families roughly about $17 million. It was the largest industrial disaster in the United States history, along with, just after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911. Which honestly, the ammonium nitrate's going to come to play later on in another explosion in Texas history.
Oh, West?
Yeah. 66 years and 1 day after this explosion. It's insane.
I was thinking while you were saying it, that reminds me of the explosion in West that everybody thought was an earthquake.
Yeah.
The Whiskey Rebellion was in 1791, and in 1794, it was basically just a rebellion against whiskey tax.
Fuck them taxes. April 17th through the 19th in 1961, so another jump. was the Bay of Pigs, where like 1,500 Cuban soldiers that were trained by the CIA invaded Cuba in an attempt to overthrow Castro, and they were under the ideal that we were going to provide aid in the air, like we were going to help them. Our Air Force was going to, intercede on their behalf, but that didn't happen because Kennedy wouldn't do it, and that led to
him getting shot in the head.
No, well, not. It's a theory, but what ultimately ended up happening became like a huge failure, and and it led to Castro being a military hero in Cuba. And then kind of as a side note, because I don't know if you would really consider it, because it happened on April 11th, we're going to go into like what we mentioned earlier with the Apollo mission. April 11th through the 17th in 1970, Apollo 13 was the 7th crewed mission in the Apollo program, and it was the 3rd one that was meant to go to the moon. But on April 13th, it was aborted after an oxygen tank in the service module failed, which instead they had to loop around the moon, and they returned safely on April 17th, 1970.
And it was only just barely, too.
Emilio's spouting libertarian things in the comments.
It happens. Yeah? He's one of those conspiracy guys, and I figure most people that are into conspiracies are libertarians. It just seems like a libertarian thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these incidents so far seem like political incidents. I wonder if there's any kind of correlation there too with the people that are kind of obsessed with like linking all these things together. I mean,
there absolutely is.
Do what?
There absolutely is. Especially like later on when we get into the 90s. Particularly with right-wing extremists, who don't trust the government and, have tried to rise up in one way or another, particularly, like, especially when we get into not just right-wing extremists, but we're talking, like, right-wing, white supremacist extremists.
What I was more referring to, though, was, like, political cycles, though. Like, if it has to do with the timing of the incidents. Not necessarily, like, political in nature, where it's people that are political are seeing the conspiracies, but more that these specific events pop up in April because of the timing of certain political gears moving at certain times. Like, we always have elections in November. Does that spur certain types of changes that get made, policy changes that get made that kind of cause disasters to happen in the same period of time? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I don't think it's unfounded, because, I'm trying to think of a way to say it. Like, there's always,
you haven't said anything besides and like 4 different times.
I know, I'm trying to think of words, damn it.
I think you're trying.
Well,
are you talking about causation?
Words. You have 3 words, like and You're good. You're doing words.
Shut up. But I think there might be actually something to that.
Yeah.
Especially given like the time gaps. Like we have another time gap in April 18th, 1983, the U.S. embassy bombing in Beirut. A member of the Islamic Jihad organization drove a car bomb into the embassy and blew himself up and killed another 63 people, which included 17 Americans that were working there. It was considered the very first time Islamists intentionally targeted the U.S. How far was that from the embassy incident in the 70s? Was it 77? with the where people were taken hostage?
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I suck at dates.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Like
I'm not even
I
remotely
remember
into
incidents
history.
and stories. Elena wants to know what the hell was happening in the 3-week period the year before the first documented incidents.
So far, it's not on any 4-year cycle, Julie.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, because like the first gap was like what 50 years, 100 years, or something like that. Because we went from the American Revolution to Lincoln. So you went from the American Revolution to, you know, the Confederate
Civil War.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was solid. I'm just saying.
It doesn't seem to correlate to new presidents yet.
No, and I don't think it really does anyway. If we're being honest, I don't think it correlates to presidencies. I think it just, whatever's going on at that time, because, at the time Lincoln was assassinated, we were at war. And of course with 70-75, we were at war. We're
at war more than we're not at war, so...
That's true, because in 1961, we were in a Cold War.
Hey, funny thing about the Cold War, that term was coined today in history. I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of the guy that coined it, but on this day in history podcast, they said today was the day that the term Cold War was coined.
That's very interesting. I did not know.
April, man, April's the month.
April is.
But shit, I lost my total train of thought. I had a thought about the whole thing.
Well, what's next on the list of tragedies?
April 16th through the 19th of 1985.
Ooh, the year I was born.
Yeah. Actually not. You were probably just weeks old, or a month old at least, because this was the Elijah, Missouri siege. On April 16th, the FBI obtained a search warrant for the compound of a white supremacist Christian terror group called the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, yeah. The Covenant. I'm all about the Covenant. It just sounds it sounds horrible and like something that should be cursed.
Yes. This led to a standoff that ultimately ended peacefully on April 19th, 1985, with the arrest of the leaders of this sect. Even though it ended peacefully, it helped inspire the OKC bombing in 95. April 18th, 1992, Ruby Ridge helicopter incident.
Ruby Ridge, that's the thing that preceded Waco, right?
Waco, yeah. Well, it's the FBI's other major screw-up besides Waco.
Yeah, so the actual events of Ruby Ridge didn't turn fatal until August 21st of that year.
Oh, a couple of days before my birthday.
Yeah, so that April, though, a helicopter for Geraldo Rivera flew over the compound, and the crew then reported being shot at, which is what led to the justification for what happened later that year. So a grand jury then later reported that the accusation made by Geraldo and his crew members was, quote, grossly unjust. So they have no proof that they were shot at. They were just like, oh, these people are shooting at me, so of course the FBI, did what they did. Which, of course, then also partly inspired the Oklahoma City bombing in 95. There's a lot of these. And then we get to April 19th, 1993, with the Branch Davidian fire.
So it happened in April again.
Yes.
I didn't catch when we did the podcast earlier on the cult thing. I didn't even catch that is that? And what are you doing?
What are you talking about?
Okay, y'all have to hear that, right? Somebody's just like threw their phone in a blender.
I can't hear either of y'all. There's something weird going on. I can't hear either of y'all.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Okay. So, April 19th, 1993 is the Branch Davidian fire. After a 51-day siege at the Branch Davidian compound, which, of course, we know is an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventists, ended when FBI attempted to raid the facility, and, of course, it resulted in a fire that killed 76 people, including David Koresh. And almost, I would say it directly impacted what happened 2 years later. Because now we have April 19th, 1995, which was Oklahoma City. Gulf War vets Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols blew up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City using 7,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, killing 168, which this included 19 children that were
the daycare.
That were in the daycare center that was directly above where the bomb went off. And it was intentionally staged 2 years to the day of the Waco siege. It was the deadliest act of terrorism in the United States history until 9/11. It is still the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in the U.S.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah. It was a bad day. I remember coming home, watching it on the news, and just being like, I never knew, I don't know. I never thought anything like that would happen, let alone that it would happen again.
I don't remember it.
You don't remember it?
How old was I?
Well, it was 9. I was about 9, so you had to been about 10.
Yeah, no, I don't remember it. I blanked out 10 and 11.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of have an idea why a lot of events would happen in April, and I think a lot of it has to do with seasonal activity, because you got to think about what's going on in the April month. We're kind of just coming out of winter, where we've been holed up inside for a while, and everybody's got really bored. And I mean, the further back you go, the worse it gets, because now we have entertainment inside.
Well, too, during winter, people generally lack serotonin and vitamin D due to lack of sunlight. Lack of serotonin leads to depression, mood swings, angry outbursts, even physical violence.
And planning terroristic acts. It's science.
Apparently.
I mean, yeah. And so they come out of this long hibernation of just being stuck indoors, starving because they can't grow enough crops, with their families, which they hate because they all had these huge families back then.
In the 90s?
I'm going further back. I'm going where this curse started, right? So they have.
But then why has it gotten worse?
Why has it gotten worse? Because the internet. Have you seen the trash people that are on the internet? Have you seen the people that are currently watching this show? It's horrible.
But people are more aware of needing sunlight and eating the right vegetables and stuff, so you'd think that stuff would actually get lower.
Yeah, but
you have more entertainment.
Don't do it anyway.
You have more entertainment during the winter. You're not starving, so you think it would actually be better.
But it is not.
It is not. Also, there's a lot more people in general.
Also, I think people are more easily corrupted by the Illuminati on the internet now because they have access directly to us.
They are getting into your brain meats.
I like how you were talking about the White House being the top of the pentagram in the design.
It is the bottom of the pentagram, my good sir.
Do what?
It is the bottom of the pentagram, my good sir.
Okay, but to my point that I made earlier is that you can take any point on a map and you can make it any point on a pentagram just by picking 4 other spots on the map.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't say it was sound or good. I'm just saying that
you're really not selling me on this.
Is the next one Columbine?
Yes, the next one is April 20th, 1999. Columbine.
I remember that one.
Yep. 15 were killed in the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history at that point.
Yeah, at that point.
Yeah.
And then it was Virginia Tech for a while, and now
Emilio
it's not anymore.
says there's more access to information to fuel thoughts of violence on the internet, and while that is technically true, there is more things to find. You have to kind of subscribe to the idea that seeing violent things like on TV or video games and stuff like that is not cathartic, but actually makes people violent. But there's no evidence to show that.
I don't think that's true. I think if you've noticed, specifically with incels, you know how I made a profile on one of those pages and pretended to be one of them? Because
you are one of them.
You have to be a boy to be an incel. You have to have a penis to be an incel. But anyway, it's that crab bucket theory I was talking about, which is an actual psychological thing where if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, if one of them starts to escape, the other crabs will pull it back in. And closed-off internet communities act like that. The second anyone starts to think differently or escape from the herd, they get yanked back in by the people there, and it becomes this whole place of circular logic, which if you started off a mild participant, you become radicalized very rapidly.
And that's not just on the internet. That also applies to life pre these internet groups, like with white nationalism, because that's what radicalized Timothy McVeigh.
Well, the difference is now no matter what you are, you can find a group. Before, a lot of people were just freak loners. There's no such thing anymore. They all have a group now.
Yeah, there's a website. You can type in anyweirdthing.com and probably find a website for it.
But cults of any kind have always been like that. But now everyone can find one.
Well, that and this is a good and bad thing though. But we're a generation of like acceptance for stuff. Don't sex shame people. Don't different things, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of things that you shouldn't be shaming, but then like these other groups try to weasel their way under that banner. Like you have like
like pedophiles are trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking was like NAMBLA. They're like, oh no, you shouldn't shame us for this, and it's like, no, what you're doing is ethically wrong, completely, and that.
Or we don't want to shame people for being radicalized right-wingers or radicalized Christian or any religion.
Yeah,
but we should absolutely shame these people. Some people need it.
Yeah, like white nationalists, Nazis, quote, Proud Boys.
Yes.
They need to be shaved. They need to be shaved so hard.
Except the problem is, much like with Christianity, where it talks about, in the Bible even, being hated for your faith.
Right.
People have internalized that, and they use that as fuel for their fire. So you can't do anything about it. If you shame them, they're martyrs. If you support them, they have support. So it's really a catch-22. There is nothing you can do about this except ignore them, and if you ignore them, they blow up buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Or become a bigger problem because they keep recruiting.
Yeah, so what do? There is no answer. There's no right answer for that.
Murder?
No.
What you do is you curse them so that there's a culling every April. And
the problem is they're culling the normal people.
Maybe they flip. Well, because the bad people are the only ones that remember how to do the correct witchcraft to make the April curse kind of flip over or whatever.
I've also heard it said that bad people always win these things because they don't care what they do morally. Good people work within certain restraints.
My mom brings up a good point.
Don't.
She says how much of this had to come from the internet. She didn't. This didn't used to be so mainstream on the internet, and she's kind of got a good point in that, like, how long was this, like, the April curse conspiracy sort of, how long was that thought process going on before information was more readily available on the internet, where it could be pieced together quicker?
I really couldn't say, other than, like, there have been articles about it, but most of the articles are from the internet age. Like one article I read was from like 2013 and then 2017 and then 2019. You know, most people, I wouldn't say call it like a curse, quote unquote, because, I mean, I don't know.
I offended Elena because I called it witchcraft earlier. Really, I just meant like dark magic, whatever. I picked a random word out of the lexicon. Emilio says the purge is in March.
The purge is in March. I think, like, what is it, like March 20th?
I don't know, because that's not a real thing.
As soon as the coronavirus is over, it will be. We're going to go...
Did you hear about Louisiana, where they accidentally played the purge siren to make people go inside at night for the curfew?
But did it work?
It did work, but then they later apologized for it. They had to write an article saying they were very, very sorry.
That's hilarious.
I mean, it's effective.
I'm surprised there's anybody left in Louisiana. It just, like, God keeps trying to just erase it off of the planet. And...
Well, maybe don't build your city under sea level. I'm just saying. I think a lot of the recent radicalization happened when Obama became president, and I think a lot of it's linked back to racism.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, there was, like, a huge surge, particularly of, you know, white nationalists. Like, white nationalists have always been here, but they seem to really come out of the shadows.
Well, because they can actually find each other on the internet now, with anonymity. Because before, if you were a racist in the 50s, right? You know,
your biggest form of anonymity was a sheet.
Yeah, exactly. But like,
you're wearing the same shoes,
but if you
Billy
wanted
Bob.
to know if the other white dude at the end of the milkshake place was also a supremacist, you know, you had to throw out like your super secret gang sign and make sure
you had to dog whistle.
Yeah, you had to do something, and then you would get like the nod, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, he's one of us, you know, sort of thing. Now you can just type in, you know, I hate ethnicgroup.com, and suddenly you're just connected with every other piece of scum on the planet.
Which, I mean, back in the 90s, you had to specifically look for it.
See, it irritated me when Trump became president and people were like, oh, racism wasn't a thing again until Obama was in office, and it's because he was such a crappy president. I was like, that's not true. You're obviously not from the South, because the KKK never left. The Nazis never left.
Racism was always alive and well. It never went away. It was just, you know, dormant.
Well,
because a bunch of right-wingers, they said, they were like...
Go ahead, sorry.
I just, on the internet, I had a bunch of right-wingers telling me, oh, this is all Obama's fault. Racism was pretty much gone before he was president. I was like, I see that you're from the same town I am, but I'd like to know if you had your head up your ass for your entire life.
Yeah, I know, right? Or they just weren't acknowledging that maybe some of the things they were doing were a tad bit racist. You know?
I don't know. I don't get it, but...
Well, the North did a really bad job of... let's see, what am I trying to say tactfully here? You know, after the Civil War was over, they just kind of left. And then they took a bunch of people with them, and then they decided to just let a lot of us hang out and do what we were going to do. And they're like, okay, don't do that bad thing again. And we're like, you got it. We're not going to do that. And then we didn't...
Well, economically, during the Reconstruction, the South basically was left to shoulder the burden of the cost of war, which they should have been, because they're the ones who caused it. But, unfortunately, it ruined so many people, and that's why a big chunk of the South is still poor to this day.
That was a big, long post I made when someone told me that. I was like, we're still angry about the Civil War, bro. Do you know how impoverished we are? Just, what are you thinking?
Well, our entire economy was built on the backs of people we weren't paying at the time. Like, every every bro dude that wants to argue about the Civil War being about states' rights and blah, 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 they're right. It is about states' rights. It's about states' rights to have slaves and make the economy function on not having to pay anybody. I mean, the South is the region that's responsible for saying, no, we don't want to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Julie keeps asking about the undernet. Is that the dark net? Is that what she's talking about? I'm confused.
I think that's where drow live.
That's the Underdark.
Same thing.
No, but Julie, are you talking about the dark web, or I don't know what the internet is?
Yeah, it's all the same thing. There's internet, dark web, undernet.
Yes, there is still a dark web.
Oh, there will always be a dark web.
But most of these people don't need it because the incel side is on the normal internet.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, if you really want to do something in secret, just call somebody on a landline, because nobody knows what's going on landlines anymore.
But you'd have to have a landline.
Oh, they're around.
We have one.
Weird. Even my 89-year-old grand.
If you have a landline in 2020, you're a drug dealer. I bet you also have a pager.
My grandma's 89 and can't work a cell phone, yet she has no landline.
Yep. But I don't know.
So we're to Columbine. What's next?
April 16th, 2007, Virginia Tech.
Okay.
Yeah. 33 people died in what they're still calling the second deadliest single-shooter incident in United States history. And of course, like I said earlier, the shooter referred to the Columbine shooters as martyrs.
Do you remember that show I Survived, Allie?
Yes.
I was just watching the episode where they had 3 people from Virginia Tech on that talking about it.
Oh my God.
And it sounded horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas one was kind of worse because he got smart and pulled the fire alarms, but still. You know, that whole Virginia attack assault only lasted 10 minutes. He fired over 2,000 rounds and killed all those people in less than 10 minutes.
It feels like you shouldn't be able to do that.
Meanwhile, the next episode was about a guy with a machete attacking an elementary school. It took him almost an hour, and he didn't kill a single person. So that's the difference between guns and machetes, just for the record.
That's also a testament to why you should always invest points and proficiencies in D&D, because if you're not proficient with your weapon, you're never going to roll high enough to actually do damage.
But it just floors me that was 10 minutes. And how many people died?
33.
And he injured way more than that.
Yeah.
What kind of weapon was he using?
Was it an AR or a case? Sorry.
I believe it was an AR.
AR-15.
I could be wrong.
He also was good with it, supposedly, even though he fired a lot of rounds. They said he had trained for a long time.
Yeah, no, he was planning on it for a good while.
Because he chained the doors.
Yeah, it was definitely planned. It's not like he just snapped one day. He was planning it.
Well, he did snap one day. It was just months and months earlier. And then, he carefully planned.
I'm not sure if it counts as a snap if you're able to carefully plan something.
I'm sure the court doesn't see it that way.
I don't know. He's dead. Doesn't matter. Suicide.
Yep. So, yeah.
Okay,
So Virginia Tech also happened in April. So let's roll the clock forward. What happens next?
April 20th, 2010, the BP oil spill. An explosion on the Deepwater Horizon killed 11 workers, and the end result was the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history.
Hey, Dylan O'Brien's in a movie about that.
He sure is. He got hurted on that one.
He also got hurt in the third Maze Runner movie. He got run over and had his face smushed, but he's still hot. It doesn't matter.
I know. I was really upset when I heard his face got smushed.
Yeah, I was very worried.
I was very upset.
Y'all are pedophiles.
I googled his age before I ever found him acute, and he is my age. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but,
just because he plays a teenager on MTV.
The fact that you had to Google his age to be okay with it, that tells you right there.
He's our age. It's okay. And that brings us to April 15th, 2013, the Boston Marathon. A bomb went off at the finish line and killed 3 instantly. It set in motion the events that week that led to a few more people being killed, including one of the bombers. I think they're including like other people who died later of their injuries. And God, what they locked down all of Boston, didn't they? Do you remember?
Yeah.
No.
No, I remember they locked down. They eventually found the guy in the apartment, and his kid was with him too.
Yeah. Well, no, when his kid was his brother, but the older brother was killed, and they found the younger brother hiding in a boat in somebody's backyard. So I remember the footage of him being found, like the helicopter footage.
Man, I don't remember that one either. I must just edit this stuff from my mind.
You don't remember the Boston Marathon thing? They made a Claymore mine out of a pressure cooker.
No, I remember it happening, but I don't remember any of the secondary facts.
Yeah, I remember you and I were listening to a police scanner or something, like a police scanner app. And we were trying to listen to what's going on in Boston. Yeah, and then on April 17th, 2 days later in 2013, the West Fertilizer Plant explosion.
I definitely remember that one because Steven's dad was still a firefighter at the time, and they all went to West. And me and Allie went to West because Westboro was supposed to be there.
Yep.
And we got kolaches, and we surveyed the town, and it was very somber.
Yeah, it was. It was terrible. 15
and that's the first day I ever had an RA flare.
It was, yeah, because your knee was the size of a fucking orange.
Yeah, by the time we got back, I was like, something weird's going on with my body. So there we go, April curse. I got RA on that day in history.
I was just about to ask, when did you get your hand smashed? When did all that start?
Jeez, when did I get my hand? Steven, do you remember what month it was when I got my hand smashed?
Please tell me it was April.
Steven. He's got his headphones in. I don't know. He'll answer because he's listening to the podcast.
15 people died in an ammonium nitrate fertilizer explosion. It was 66 years and 1 day after the Port of Texas City explosion. And a lot of it was overshadowed by the events in Boston because it just happened to happen in the same week.
You sound pretty sore about that. One is supposed to be more popular than the other.
Well, it was a big thing.
It just should have gotten some recognition, and the only recognition it got was that the people that were working there were fools because they were illegally storing they had too much, but the other thing they said was everyone who lived in a house near there deserved what they got because of zoning regulations, and I wanted to make the statement, it's an industrial town, a lot like Cleburne. So the industry pops up, you build around that. My apartment at the time was a mile away from an old dynamite factory. It's not the fault of the people that were living there. And the only press it got was basically that they had it coming, which felt like an insult.
It really did, especially considering it was found later to be caused by arson.
Yeah, they just completely tore the people that worked there and the people that lived near there a new a-hole, and a bunch of first responders perished in that fire, and this was while I still had certs. So I took that very insulting.
Yeah, it was, the way they treated it was kind of an insult. They barely touched on it, and what little they touched on it, they used to kind of rightfully expose the lax regulations in the state of Texas. But they also just kind of we got a lot of comments why are they building towns around it?
Yeah, why were
where are the people who work there supposed to live?
Yeah, and I don't get it. It's that the other incident they felt bad for them, which is the right thing to do for someone in that situation. And when it happened here, they were like, "Oh well, guess they had it coming."
Emilio's onto the same train of thought that I was sitting here thinking while y'all were talking. But he says, "I wonder if you could find records of ER visits per month and see if there's a larger amount in April." And that's kind of what I was thinking, going back to what you were talking about with the percentage of incidents being bigger in April than any other month.
I don't remember April being any worse. January was usually bad.
Yeah.
I figured July would be bad because of all the July 4th incidents or whatever.
Fireworks, but those are usually minor. The times that are bad is any holiday where people choose to get drunk.
Yeah,
New Year's, St. Patrick's Day.
Intuitively, I would say
Memorial
like
Day.
December would be the worst because you have both Christmas, Hanukkah. It's right after Thanksgiving.
Turns out that actually boosts the mood. That's a real weird myth that people die more during the holidays. It's right after the holidays where they lose that brain chemical boost from the holidays that they tend to commit suicide. And that there tend to be more incidents.
So, yeah. I don't know. I didn't even think to look for ER records, but that's interesting. I don't know if I want to look at it right now because I'm pretty sure they're pretty high right now.
I am curious about the statistics
behind
the whole thing because it's like the whole discussion. It very, very obviously it cherry picks, any event that happened in April and says, okay, look at all this stuff that happened in April, and completely ignores anything out of the other 11 months. But if there is like a higher percentage of deaths or a higher percentage of certain types of incidents during that month over the other 11, then there is kind of something to it that there is a higher concentration of certain types of incidents during that month. But I'm curious of what those stats reveal to it. Like what is the math behind that?
Right.
March is the busiest month of the year for doctors, followed by January and August. I knew there was a boost in January. July 4th has the most daily incidents, but the month of March is the worst, and then January, and then August.
So,
and it's the lowest.
April, it's the worst.
It's the lowest in November and December.
So, yeah.
So April has a higher amount of incidents because everybody's getting out of the hospital and they're like, I'm invincible. And they go and do things. I wonder if there's like any kind of connection to like solstice or certain types of like holidays that are happening.
Beside the one holiday where we blow up stuff as a national pastime.
Well, I mean, okay, so Easter's in April. That's the celebration of the resurrection of Christ. But I think historically that's not when that happened. I think, like every other Christian holiday, that it was a pagan holiday converted to be used as that. So what pagan holiday was that converted from?
Well, April 17th is known as Patriots' Day, and it commemorates the start of the American Revolution.
Esther or whatever was Easter.
So maybe the
it's
curse
a fertility
could be
holiday.
From Esther being pissed off that her holiday was given to the Christians.
Ostara is March 21st, but I don't know. According to American gods, that goddess is happy because everybody celebrating Jesus keeps her alive and in power. But that's,
American gods is absolutely what I live my life by. That is
it's fact-based.
Yeah, it's that is dogmatic.
I think when it comes to like particular incidents like domestic terror, like I was saying earlier with Patriots' Day being on April 17th, that is not a fact that is lost on militia groups, particularly militia groups that were behind 4 of these incidents that were on this list. So it hasn't, the whole thing hasn't been lost on them, and so like a part of me is like I'm pretty sure they picked that specifically.
Well, yeah, it could be that, and then religious groups could actually pick around Easter too for that reason also. So you have 2 different sets of extremists. You have religious extremists and political extremists, all kind of coalescing into the same month.
any holiday where people are visiting family too is a good time for terrorism, because people are traveling, cops are distracted by people on the road. It's just a good time to, get in there and do what you're going to do.
And natural disasters in general are good times to capitalize. Good times. That's a bad choice of words, but it are opportune times to commit acts of terrorism. I think Allie posted it, but I just read an article today that was talking about terrorists trying to capitalize on all the people that are in the hospital now for terroristic acts.
One thing, and I was so mad that it flew so under the radar, well, at least comparatively, was back in March. A guy was caught, and I think he was killed by the FBI, trying to drive a car bomb into a hospital in Kansas City.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was also the guy that tried to shoot up the one of the concentration camps we have on our border.
Yeah.
And that kind of got swept under the rug. That was last year, I think, and it just got no press.
Yeah, and then there's also the incident that happened not that long after the car bomb, attempt, where a guy intentionally derailed a train in LA to hit a medical ship that was supposed to treat COVID patients. Because it was all just, because obviously this is just a scam to keep everybody indoors and for the New World Order to take over.
Well, there was a protest today about that.
Oh yeah, they're all standing outside of Abbott's mansion right now, not wearing masks, not 6 feet apart.
It was a multi-state thing. Because the Proud Boys did their thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there is something to the conspiracy thing, because, Allie,
what?
Go ahead.
They were blocking traffic, and, ambulances couldn't get through, doctors couldn't get to work, where they were trying to treat these people, and it's just, it really gets under my skin.
Some guy tried to set fire to a Jewish nursing home today.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But think of all the things that aren't getting covered by the media right now because of everything that's going on. It's, you don't want to add to the conspiracy thing and make it worse, but the government does use that opportunity to handle things that would otherwise get really, really bad press by waiting until times where there's other really bad press going on that would kind of distract you from everything going on. And that's actually a truth with the way they kind of time things with the media, and that just adds to conspiracy theory. It's real easy to point at conspiracy theorists and stuff at like how ridiculous all this, there's a curse in April and that's why all this stuff. It's real easy to point at that, but the reason a lot of conspiracy theories exist is because like our government agencies and stuff have actually perpetrated conspiracies that have come out. They've done things not in our best interest.
Well, a bunch of people are on about Project Mockingbird, and that's why the media is lying about the COVID thing.
What's Project I don't know this one.
Oh, it was some real-life conspiracy that happened a while back where the government basically used the media to disseminate information. And they're basically saying it's still going on, and the media is entirely lying to you. All of them. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't trust the media anymore anyway. It's real easy to laugh at everybody. It's like, I don't trust the media, it's a conspiracy. But the media and I don't think it's a conspiracy, but I think the media sucks in general now anyway because they've become so, institutionalized and polarized.
Well, what's the term? Lead that bleeds? They want to do the most sensationalized stuff because that's where they get their viewers. That's not a conspiracy. That's making money.
Yeah. The news, we will not have, unless somebody steps up or whatever, we will not have news like our parents had news. Because it's all about, the bigger story. It's all about money. It's all about rating. It's all about, and a lot of that we saw in Columbine. You know?
Oh, yeah, they were bullied. They were wearing trench coats. They were the underdog, blah, 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 when really they were popular jerk bullies.
Yeah, because they're going to print what gets the most the buys and the most clicks, not what is actually facts. Like, we don't have access to news anymore. We have access to media, which is a completely different thing. Yeah,
exactly. Like, you know, all of these, you know, quote, journalists that we see on Fox News, on MSNBC, like stuff like that, they're just talking heads. They're entertainers.
Yeah, and even the documentaries that we watch are spun in certain lights. Like everybody's really into Tiger King and all that.
Oh yeah, but that was spun like crazy. But I think we get more factual information from people like John Oliver, which is insane.
Yeah, our satire stations have become more factual than the media outlets.
And it's more tolerable because it's kind of funny. But
yeah,
it's more like
you say funny, but really it's just horrifying.
It's sad.
Yeah, he tells a joke and it feels like a gut punch.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it should. I mean, it really should feel like a gut punch, but yeah. So, is America cursed? And if so, is it could it be?
What's that meme going around? Is it because the whole country's over in a Native American burial ground? Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
I think there's some validity there. You know, yeah, it's a funny joke or whatever, but with our experiences at Kyle, look at that. Maybe there is something to that.
Because it's funny.
Hey, Allie.
Probably true. Yeah.
Catherine mentioned V for Vendetta. Wasn't that about the 4th of November?
Yes.
Yes, remember.
Okay, so my question is, in that country, do they have a higher instance of things in that month?
Probably. I think they do, but I'd have to look it up. Let me see. Because, I mean, it wouldn't kind of make sense because, you know, like, the Guy Fawkes Day is kind of a big day.
Oh, they get rallied up about that like we do about July 4th. It's funny, you talk to a lot of Americans, and it's so bad how uneducated we are. Like, a lot of us will think July 4th is a holiday for the whole planet, and we don't realize it's an American holiday for American Independence Day.
So then my question would be, if they have a higher instance of things during May, is it not that April's the problem? Is it that people think that April's the problem that's the problem?
I think so. I mean, that's kind of what I'm taking away from it.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and because it feels like everything happens, and I think this is especially in my case because growing up, it seemed like all the bad things happened. Like, I remember watching the siege at Waco. I remember, the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember, we both remember Columbine. It feels like, so you're more in tuned into looking at, it's like, well, it's April. Of course this happened.
Well, yeah, and like I said, it really cherry picks because like one of the biggest American tragedies, 9/11, happened in September.
It was in September.
Yeah. But
I also wonder, people may be choosing to do stuff in April because of this.
To keep it going, to keep it alive,
or just because it feels right to them.
Well, because they've been indoors depressed and playing video games all winter. Yeah.
I don't know the logic of anyone who goes into a school and shoots a bunch of kids, but maybe they're like, oh, it's April. This is when I need to do this because this is when all the bad stuff happens.
I'm not seeing anything on incidents that go up. I mean, there's a bunch of, people do still celebrate Guy Fawkes Day in November, but it's not like,
So the storyline of V for Vendetta is that the government disseminates a virus to target certain areas, and then they take over the country and then provide a miracle cure when people are stripped of all their rights. I've never seen that movie.
You've never seen that's a great movie.
Yeah.
I need to see that, apparently.
Okay, we'll watch that on our next live viewing. It's a great movie.
Okay.
You'll like it.
Isn't that the one with the chick with the shaved head?
Yeah.
And the guy in the Guy Fawkes mask?
Is it Natalie Portman? No, it's not Natalie Portman.
It is Natalie Portman.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's Natalie Portman.
And the guy that does the voice for V is is Agent Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like The Matrix.
It's not like The Matrix.
We're in The Matrix.
It happens in April because they had spring break to make a plan.
They're coming off this like spring break hangover.
They're like, fuck, everything sucks.
I've got to go back to school. I need to make a plan to blow it up.
School's out for
Wedgwood was in September.
Yeah, it was meet you at the pool day.
Yeah, it was a few months after Columbine. I remember that one.
Okay, so we got
very
2 incidents
vividly.
in September that's trying to take the title for from April.
Well, that one specifically happened on See You at the Poll Day because they knew everyone would be at church that night.
See, the reason I don't think it's like a curse or it's like anything like that is because there seems to be no intervals of time. There seems to be no correlation between like body counts or types.
The
of
reason
crimes.
I don't think it's a curse is because curses don't exist.
That's not true. You believe that because you're not a baseball fan. That's why.
The curse is baseball existing because it's the most boring sport ever.
No,
And
the
what
curse
happened
is
in
the
April?
Red Sox
Baseball.
traded the Bambino and then, could never get a
Then
title.
the Titanic sank.
The curse is I once had to go to a Rangers game and I couldn't leave until the 5th inning.
Why would you leave?
Because I wanted to poke my own eyes out. I would have jumped off the stands and broken my neck to get out of having to watch that game.
She would have pulled a straight up Event Horizon, just yanked her eyes. Do you see?
Don't mention that movie. It's horrifying. Now I'll have
I
nightmares.
watched it the other night. It's great.
It does not
Wow.
hold up, man. Like the I've tried to watch
It's so
it.
terrifying.
My favorite part of Event Horizon is what's his face just walking around without a shirt for no reason, sucking in his fat gut.
So I guess we need to look at like what factors make people do these things and figure out if like the seasonal thing or if stuff like that actually has an impact on this, because a lot of these things do happen in September and April, and that's right before and right after summer break.
Maybe it's kind of like a seasonal work shift disorder or whatever. Like
How seniors get like senioritis, quote unquote, like towards the end of the year, or like how people kind of tend to drift out like before summer vacation begins.
Well, what's happening with us culturally during those times of years? I mean, think about that. Like, school-wise, things are kind of winding. Like she said, it's spring break, so things are kind of winding down or whatever. And we're coming out of spring break. People are pissed off about going back to school, going back to work, things like that. We're coming out of winter, so people have spent possibly a long amount of time being depressed or trapped with their families.
Yeah, they're not getting their serotonin.
I know culturally, specifically with the Oklahoma City bombing, the mindset of Timothy McVeigh was
there were no more cows to tip.
No, the government was infringing on the rights of the Branch Davidians. Like, he identified with the Branch Davidians and what they were doing, not specifically with the cult, but with having guns. Because
not with the pedophilia, but with the guns.
Yeah, but with the guns, it was, he saw it as a government overreach, and he blamed the FBI for what happened, even though it was kind of both.
I can't say Timothy McVeigh was wrong in his logic. He was wrong in his execution of displaying that logic, but I do think it was a government overreach. They were within their Second Amendment rights in
Timothy
Texas.
McVeigh was also radicalized by a group of white nationalists, and he had some pretty far-right ideals.
So what I'm hearing is that right now is an excellent time for something like this to happen. A lot of people feel like the government's overreaching right now on both sides.
I would say it's kind of a perfect tinderbox.
Yeah.
With one side, the government's going too far, and with the other side, the government's not going far enough, and they're doing it in the wrong way.
Yeah, my thoughts are the government's doing it the wrong way. Like, we absolutely need to be staying inside and doing things that benefit us as far as keeping, not keeping us
Keeping
safe
the
from the
populace
virus,
safe.
but flattening the curve and things like that. We definitely need to be using science to our advantage to...
Well, I don't think everybody needs to be inside. I don't think that's right either.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, but the real problem is people won't fucking behave themselves. Like, we wouldn't have to tell everybody to go inside and treat everybody like babies and strip people of their rights if they would like, I was in Walmart the other day. No, I get what you're saying. It is an invasion of rights. I'm not
saying that. I'm saying the government has done this poorly in the fact that everybody should have had an antibody test and a test by now. I don't care if you're showing symptoms, and anyone who's immune could be working right now.
Absolutely.
There's no reason they couldn't be.
Absolutely.
But as citizens, what can we do about that? Absolutely nothing. That's all up to our government.
Well, that's like that argument I was having with the guy on our... oh, shit. What did I do?
It was the YouTube page?
Yeah. Are we still streaming? Yeah, we're still streaming. Yeah, the argument I was having with the guy on the YouTube page, because he was specifically talking about, well, I'm not going to roll over. I'm not going to let him take my rights, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, we're going to go out and we're going to secretly hang out in large groups. I'm like, first off, that is rolling over because you're doing it in secret. And B, you're not doing anything useful because there's nothing to do anyway because everything is shut down for your safety. And the other point I was making to him, I was like, even if you don't, like, you really only have two options. One, if there's something you don't like, vote it out. Vote it down, exercise your right as an American citizen to fix that. Or B, radicalize and violently overthrow the government. The first one is a privilege that you get if the government decides to stop.
The problem with the first one is that everybody has to also be on your side. Otherwise, your vote means nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing is you have to be allowed to cast a vote, too, because if the government is overreaching and they just decide to do martial law across all the land, your only option is to violently overthrow the government. But what are you going to do with the shotgun? And even if you have an AR-15 at the house, you're not going to get very far. They have tanks and planes,
drones,
and drones, and cyber, the ability to shut you down.
What did George Carlin call them? Nintendo pilots.
Yeah.
But a huge problem, I do think, if they said, okay, let's test everybody for COVID and let's antibody test them, is I feel like a bunch of people would refuse it. Because I feel like they think that was an overreach. Any sort of mandatory testing.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of people would immediately be like, nope, never, nope.
Well, look how people are with fucking vaccines.
Yeah, I know.
It's one of the biggest problems with vaccines right now is that they're optional, which it should be your right to refuse a vaccine, but it should also be my right to say you don't get to go out in public anymore.
Oh, yeah, if you refuse, I think it's perfectly valid to refuse a vaccine.
But you don't get to participate in society.
Yeah, your kids can't go to public school. You live on your creepy homestead out with no one, and you live your life. That's fine.
Yeah, and you have babies with daddy because that's what your family does.
Yeah.
That's what I think about people that don't vaccinate.
I know a lot of anti-vaxxers. I have family members that are anti-vaxxers. I don't let my kids go near them, and I don't go near them because I'm immune compromised.
Well, there's valid reasons not to vaccinate. They are very, very few and far between. If you have a valid reason not to vaccinate, like you can't have vaccinations because of certain medical conditions and stuff.
If I try to go and get a flu vaccine and I'm having a flare, they will refuse me a vaccine. Therefore, I rely on everybody else in my family to get vaccinated. And that's the problem with all this, because you need everybody else to do it.
Where are we at with COVID testing now? Do we have enough tests or?
No.
Texas is 47th in testing in our country.
Yeah.
But is it from a lack of available tests or a lack of us getting the tests?
I'm not sure.
Yes.
I know they're still refusing unless you have a contact-based symptoms. So unless you were for sure in contact with someone who was like out of the country, they're still refusing people. They're calling it a presumptive positive and treating you like you have it, quarantining you, and stuff. But you're like the numbers just came out for Cleburne. Only 5 people have tested positive in Cleburne, but I know 3 people that have symptoms who have gone to get tested, and they've said, no, you're fine. We'll call it a presumptive positive, but that doesn't get counted.
Yeah.
And that's still, and even in New York, that is still happening, where a lot of people weren't tested until they were dead.
Well, and even then, people are saying they're inflating the number by saying, oh, Jim died of a heart attack, and they're calling it a COVID death because he also had COVID. Well, first off, he probably would have survived that heart attack if he didn't have COVID. Second off, 10 people just died from pneumonia, but they never tested them, and so that's not getting counted. So the number
And
is
doesn't
actually...
COVID cause pneumonia?
Yeah. The number is actually lower. People think it's inflated higher by counting in other incidental deaths.
They're
but
also
it's
not
actually higher.
Yeah, and because like they just now started counting people who died in their homes.
Yeah.
And
they're saying because of the amount of rural areas in Texas that our number is never going to be accurate. Any state with a high population that lives outside of the city and tends to not seek medical care, we're never going to know. We'll never know.
Yeah. And it makes it so much harder. Like, and the thing that makes it so hard for people to understand, because people want to be like, well, the flu kills this many people. It's like, well, this is a new virus.
I wish that nobody had ever said it was anything similar to the flu when this started, because that has fucked every American in the head since. Where they're like, oh, it's just a flu. Me and Sarah were listening to the radio one day, and the chick on there was saying, oh, I'm not going to get it because I'm immune to the flu. And we were just like, what the hell are you smoking?
Allie says she said her mom said the tests have been failing, so they were putting people in quarantine even though the test came back negative due to them only being 70% effective. Steven says there are a bunch of tests, but they aren't doing them. The labs are saying now they have had a huge downturn in tests being submitted.
Yeah.
Another thing is people are choosing not to seek medical care because they're scared of medical care right now. They say, okay, this might be COVID, but I'm not sure, so I don't want to go to the hospital and risk also getting that if it's not that.
Well, and that is a valid concern. That's a thing. Like if your symptoms are mild enough that like you think you're sick and you're going to survive by just staying home, that is what you should be doing. You shouldn't be going to a hospital and wasting medical professionals' time.
But but here lies in the other problem, which is the affordability of medical care and the lack of people who have health insurance who could otherwise go to a doctor.
Oh, and the misinformation too, because when all this shit started, Trump came out and said, oh, everybody will be tested for free, and they're going to pay your co-payments, and they're going to cover all your treatment, blah, 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 blah. There was a bunch of misinformation out there, and the insurance companies collectively said, oh, we never said that. And there's people, without jobs right now, furloughed. They don't have enough money coming in, and they're going bankrupt because they're getting sick too, Like, my worry right now is that I'm going to get furloughed and not have enough money to pay bills or whatever. But if I get furloughed and don't have enough money to pay bills and I get sick on top of that, like, I can't even think how that is going to
Another problem that's very big, and this is what Americans always do, is they don't understand where the point is where you need to seek medical attention right then. And once you hit that point with this virus, ours hits very suddenly, that acute respiratory syndrome. So people are dying in their own homes because by the time they figure out that they can't get from their bedroom to the bathroom without turning blue, It's pretty much too late to do anything.
Yeah, that is true. And
you need to be on a vent already.
Yeah, and that's in response to like what I said about like if you're fine, stay home and don't waste their time and get tested. But you have to know when it's time to go get tested. Like
the second you can't say a 5-word sentence without taking a breath, you need to call a doctor.
Did they look into the claim about POC being affected at a higher rate?
Yeah, they did. They found out that areas with that are like higher concentration of people of color are affected disproportionately. But I think a lot of that has to do with lack of resources.
Lack of resources. They tend to be more poverty-stricken.
Yeah, it's
due to,
an economic
institutional
problem.
Racism. It's institutional racism. They tend to live in more
Impoverished areas.
more
They're crowded.
On top of each other.
Yeah.
Less space.
That's why China was such a big deal, because everything
That's why
is
New
just
York was
crowded.
such a big deal too.
Yeah.
And they tend to do less to seek medical care, because if you don't know this, people of color get written off more than white people in the medical system. They get sent home with deadly, deadly things.
Absolutely.
So why a lot of the research that needs to be done is why these people didn't seek medical care and how to fix them.
Yeah,
And
Steven
a lot
says
of it is
his
because
favorite is... Go ahead, sir.
a lot of it is like the reason me and Allie don't go to the doctor unless we're dying. You get treated by shit by a doctor enough times, and you give up.
Well, because y'all are filthy liars when you two go to the hospital.
Ha
Go
ha
fuck
ha.
yourself.
You're just there for the attention.
Uh-huh.
Steven likes
But
the
yeah.
likes the one where the virus doesn't like the heat, so we'll be fine by summer. And I've been hearing that one a lot too, because they're like, "Oh, the heat's going to dry up."
But that doesn't explain the hotter Asian climates like Singapore and Thailand, and in Vietnam.
We're spending a lot of time on COVID, but I want to point out COVID did not start in April. It just seems to be peaking in April for us.
Which still counts.
It totally counts. Counting it. I'm going to write that in my notes right now.
Well, I guess you could say that about every tragedy we were talking about, because they didn't start in April. They just ended in April. So
Yeah. April didn't start the fight. It finished it.
we didn't start the fire. No.
Damn it.
Well, any other events we didn't cover?
The Notre Dame Cathedral fire, which really wasn't anything political. It was just sad.
That fucking hunchback. We told him not to play with matches, and he's up there trying to spark a fatty. An old hunchy.
I think they were just doing construction work, and it was just a tragic accident.
No. I'm pretty sure it was that mean preacher that was in love with Demi Moore, and he didn't like that hunchback, so he tried to smoke him out of there.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The cartoon
Never
one.
seen it.
What the hell?
It's kind of creepy. It's a little rapey.
A little rapey? It's a lot of rapey.
It's a lot of rapey.
That is probably one of the rapiest Disney cartoons out there.
And
The Chinese finished developing the virus in April 2019. Haven't you heard? Oh my lord! You know Fox is actually putting on the news that this is from a lab.
And Trump and U.S. intelligence picked it up.
Well, the thing is, I read the Fox article, and they know it wasn't genetically modified by a lab because they did the gene sequencing. They know it's a natural-born virus. So what they're saying now is China went and got this virus outside of a lab, brought it back to a lab, and then this happened.
Man,
Oh, dear God.
I love
my
all the
God.
mental gymnastics that are happening this year. It's just, it really exposes the stupidity of us as a species and why we kind of deserve this virus at this point.
I spent a lot of my time just like with my face palming, just being like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Just, oh my God. Like, why is this happening?
But pretty much everything you've told us about this April curse thing has pointed to the fact that any time something like this happens, the amount of propaganda that comes out about it is stupid. This is not new. I mean, think about Columbine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was lower level, so there wasn't as much propaganda, but I mean, based on a percentage, there was as much propaganda about Columbine as there have been about this.
I think you hit on it. I think that's the April link there. I think we
Well,
were
like
looking for
after-
cycles. I think it has to do with media cycles.
Yeah.
So think about what's happening in April. Sweeps. Every media outlet is doing sweeps where they're putting out all their promo material and stuff to try to get their ratings up for.
And that's kind of exactly what kind of made the media, like, particularly like after Columbine, like that's one of the reasons why they stormed on it, because it was a nice juicy story that was on the backs of grieving children.
Right.
You know,
Conveniently
and
packaged during sweeps.
Yeah. Do you think that Klebold and Harris knew that, and that's why they did it? Do you think it was like, you know, then they were sent by the media companies to shoot them?
Well, maybe. I mean,
of the base tapes, and mostly it seems like they were goofy.
What?
Yeah, you turned into a robot.
Oh, sorry. I said I've read the entirety of the basement tapes, and mostly it seems like they were just goofy.
Yeah, no, they were dumb as fuck.
But anybody that's doing any kind of decent planning and is looking for notoriety, I mean, it wouldn't be a huge leap to realize that they thought, okay, if I do this during this time, it'll get better coverage. I wonder how many like serial killers and things like that put that much thought into it.
I don't think they really put like. Well, with the exception of like maybe BTK, because BTK wanted notoriety.
Well, BTK and maybe Zodiac. Is that because I mean he was?
Yeah.
That's the only reason BTK got caught is because someone was putting a book out about his work, and he was like, "Not on my watch."
Yeah, his boner for media attention got him caught eventually.
He wouldn't have gotten caught. He wouldn't.
No,
he had gotten away with it. He had completely gotten away with it, and someone went to write a book, and he was like, "Let me send the police a floppy disk."
What a fucking moron!
With the information where I've written over my church's information and my own name.
With my fingerprints on the dick.
Because he was like, I want the fame for this.
Yeah, well, and cool. I really like the story where he wrote ahead of time where he asked the police, "Hey, can you trace a floppy disk?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah, and they were like, "No, of course not.
Absolutely not. Not in April, anyway."
I also love that he picked his own name.
God, I know. What a
that's some balls.
I don't even consider balls as much as I think BTK is pathetic. I think of all of them, he's the most pathetic. Like he's just. I don't like him. He's my
Dahmer will always be my favorite.
I like how you have a scale for your serial killers, whether you like them or not. Like, you should really come up with another name for that scale.
Why? Dahmer's excellent.
I like him. He seems chummy.
Have you ever listened to his interviews? He's an interesting dude.
I need to come up with an app that's like Tinder, but it's just serial killers, where you can like swipe. And then we can get, like, votes and stuff for, like, different serial killers.
Plus, after watching My Friend Dahmer and reading about, like, the stuff from his friends, he seems like the kind of person I would have connected with in high school.
Yeah, he's the most relatable. Like, I could have related to him. I like Bones.
Well, he's also
one of the
ones, it seems like, he's a product of his environment, too. Like, he wasn't always screwed up.
Oh, he was definitely always screwed up.
Well, he was always screwed up, but I don't think he would have became a killer. Like, if he had been allowed to just be
early intervention. I think he needed early intervention.
Yeah, if he wasn't afraid of his own gay thoughts. B, he got help for his alcoholism. C, if he would have gotten help for his deviant nature.
Yeah, I think he's one of the few that I feel like if he'd gotten mental health care, he might have been okay. The rest, no, they were just...
I think everybody has dark thoughts and things they wrestle with, but they're able to deal with them. I feel like his dark thoughts and the things that he wrestled with weren't much different than what everybody else deals with, but he didn't have an outlet for them that wasn't so, extreme.
Julie says for a while it was a trend to shoot up schools. There were those, she's talking about the Amish shooting, 2 or 3 colleges, and there have been more high schools.
Still a fucking trend.
Yeah, except they graduated to elementary schools, bruh. Ugh.
Yeah, that's why when I visit my son at school, I have to be buzzed in through bulletproof doors.
No, that's because of crisis actors.
Uh-huh.
Oh, dear God.
That's another thing I've been curious about with all this stuff is how many of these have been undermined by people saying it was a false flag. Boston Marathon for sure, they said was a false flag.
I think a lot of the later incidents, like the more modern ones, are considered
how far does false flag go back, like as a term? I'm going to look that up real quick.
Probably the 90s, I would think. Late 90s.
I would say 90s. Because,
I think 9/11's the first time I heard it.
Oh, that 9/11 was a false flag attack?
It's a war term. In land warfare, such operations are generally deemed acceptable under certain circumstances, such as to deceive enemies, providing that the deception, blah, 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 blah. So it's a war term, and it dates back to 1788.
Oh, before the end of the Revolutionary War?
So I wonder when it dates to being used in modern terminology.
I don't know.
Civilian usage, while false flag operations originate in warfare and government, they also occur in civilian settings among certain factions, such as businesses, special interest groups, religions, political ideologies.
I know there's like people who think that the Titanic never happened, or there were.
In 2006, individuals practicing false flag behavior were discovered and outed in New Hampshire.
I hate that just in my lifetime, like, okay, so I remember when I was a kid, going through school, the World War II, the Holocaust happened, Titanic was a thing. There's all these things that happened in history.
They were liberated in April, by the way. The concentration camps were liberated in April.
Well, that seems like a good thing, not a bad thing.
Oh no, it's good. It was a bad thing that happened, but good thing they were liberated.
But there's all these points in history, like these really horrible things that happen. And when I was going through school, these were things that we were told actually happened. And then as I get older, just in my own lifetime, and it's not even like the generation after us is like forgetting. It seems like the generation before us suddenly has like flipped and decided, yeah, the Holocaust wasn't a thing.
Lord, what's the one I was telling you, Brad, about the anti-Holocaust dude who was saying that Cyclone B was merely a treatment for lice that accidentally killed people?
One time.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, one time. It was just, they were trying to delouse them. They were trying to be nice. That's what he said.
Oh my
I wish that guy would get deloused.
Yeah.
Oh.
Jesus. I heard that and I was like, really? Really? That's what you think?
Well,
I think honestly, like the new age of denialism is a lot of it is the availability of the internet and the fact that anybody can say anything.
Shit, it's its own religion now. It's its own religion to be able to just deny facts about the Earth being round.
Back in the day, you want to learn a fact, you look it up in an encyclopedia, and you know it's 100% true. And so it's easier to find true information than false information if you're actually researching a thing. Now, if you're actually researching a thing, it's just as easy to find the lie as the truth.
Oh yeah, you know how easy it was for me to find the theory about Washington D.C. It was like one of the first things that popped up. That D.C. was built on was built by like Freemasons. To let the devil rule the White House, huh?
D.C. was built by Freemasons.
It was, but this was written by someone who obviously did not like them. For whatever reason, because they're Satanists or whatever.
Because they're a fucking revolutionary political party. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Nero burning Rome and blaming it on the Christians is one of the first instances of a false flag attack. Sorry,
Yes.
I just found that interesting.
That is interesting.
That is a really yeah. Wow, how I didn't piece that together in my head was amazing.
Yeah, well,
but used in modern conspiracy theories, 9/11 is one of the first that was widely held as a false flag.
yes, 3,000.
Like to the point, I see people take like the footage and they're like, "See how the plane hits? It's obviously computer generated."
Oh yeah, nobody was on the planes. It was full of like bombs or whatever. Blah, blah, blah.
And the people that say this shit, like the Fort Worth Museum has pieces of the fucking building in there. And
I'm not sure if that's there permanently. Wasn't it a traveling piece?
I think it was a traveling piece. I know
the one that's in the lobby is permanent.
Okay, because me and Allie saw a bunch of it at the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that's in the lobby
and a
is
piece
permanent.
of the Berlin
It makes me
Wall.
freaking emotional to walk by it. I don't like it. And
yeah.
My worst 9/11 moment was me and Allie were watching the 10-year footage on TV, and Caitlin was little, and she comes in and she looks at the TV and she goes, "What horror movie are you watching?"
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I was like,
real
"Oh
life,
shit,
darling." Yeah. This is real. I think she was about 6 because I think that was the same. She had just started school, and I think it was the same year as the Sandy Hook, right?
I think it was right before that because we were still living in the 3rd-story apartment. And the first time I got a question about Sandy Hook, she was on the swing set at the trailer.
Okay.
Because she was swinging and acting totally normal, and then just asked me a question out of the blue. Hey, could that happen at my school?
That's not horrifying. This is normal.
And then she went on to tell me how, once a month they all hid under desks and had to be really quiet, and if you had to go to the bathroom, you weren't allowed to, because if you went to the bathroom, the shooter could find you.
This is a fun environment for children.
Oh, I know.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And this is why our generation isn't breeding as prolifically as others.
Yeah.
Apparently, I think we're jamming up somebody else's page because I think it put us live under their page as well, not just ours. And they're trying to go live and it's not working, so we need to wrap up pretty quick.
Okay.
I don't know what I did to cause that. It's probably because I'm an admin on there and I screwed something up.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's supposedly an American curse. It happens in April, the 3rd week, so be careful.
Yeah, be careful out there. I mean, I always find it fascinating. I know it's I don't think it's any type of curse or anything like that. I do find it fascinating, when shit happens in April. I don't know why. I don't know.
I don't think it's a curse, but I think if that is a thing, like if the number's actually higher, there's probably environmental factors that are going on that make it higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're playing both sides of the fence there because, you're all about curses when we're talking about Kyle, but then we're talking about something like this, and all of a sudden curses are stupid and we're all idiots for talking about it.
There's no curse at Kyle either.
Indian.
Native Americans.
Well, apparently that's what caused the April problem.
Because, we're on a giant burial ground.
All right.
Any final thoughts, Brad?
No final thoughts. Just if you guys can think of any other tragedies or cursed events or anything that happened in April, post them up. We want to hear about them.
Specifically the 3rd week. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in April. Martin Luther King.
Anything within a few days of Pot Day.
Yeah. You know what that means? Yeah. Pot is the devil. That's what I'm getting out of it.
All right. All right. Everybody have a good weekend. You guys stay safe. Stay inside. Don't get anybody sick.
Stay safe from the Rona.
All righty. Peace out.
Peace.